Hello and welcome to the Active Energy Podcast. Today, our experts discuss microgrids.
The future we face about the next 10 or 15 years, the environmental conditions we may face and how they may impact on our grids locally and at a micro level. And I think for us, this has really opened our eyes, as you said, to so many different scenarios that a microgrid can help plan for and cover for.
My name is Andrew Mckenzie. I am part of the Schneider Electric Energy and Sustainability team. We are excited to present a few special episodes of the podcast focusing on accelerating recovery and building resilience as the world looks forward during the COVID-19 pandemic. On this first special episode, we are joined by microgrid experts Andy Mckenzie, who is the Microgrid Lead in the UK and Ireland, and James Hawkins, Microgrid Program Deployment Manager, as they discuss the role that microgrids can play in building resilience for your business. For more information on microgrids, visit se.com/microgrids.
I'm Andy Mckenzie. I'm part of the Energy and Sustainability Services team in the UK, and my role is that I am the Microgrid Business Development Lead for UK and Ireland.
My name is James Hawkins. I have worked for Schneider Electric for about 7 years now, and I work as the Microgrid Program Manager for the United States. My background's in solar installation and power systems engineering, but I'm mostly interested in all things clean tech, and I'm really excited to be here today to talk about microgrids. Andy, I think it would be really great if we gave anyone that's listening to this kind of more of a general view of what a microgrid is. So I think for me, especially for what the United States is, a microgrid is really a self-contained electrical network. It allows people and organizations to generate their own electricity on site and use it when they need it most. It's a weird thing because it's not really a single technology, but it's more of a mix of proven technologies in an ecosystem. So what are the benefits, do you think, of having something like this, of generating power on site or being able to go off of the grid? What do you think?
Absolutely, James. I think an introduction to microgrid is perfect at this stage. For us in the UK, certainly the message that we put out to the market is that this is about taking back control of your energy as much as possible, whether it's goals driven by carbon reduction, energy management, asset control and visibility on one sort of joined up network, or whether it's revenue generation. All of these things mix together really, really nicely. And although we call it a microgrid, exactly as you say, it's kind of a localized, smart ecosystem of energy assets. And for us, the benefits are only just really starting to be fully understood by us. We know from our sort of side of things, having the Boston One campus, the benefits of that particular microgrid. But the more we develop the conversations around this solution, the more feedback we're getting from different bits of the market, and we're finding different industries are finding their own sort of unique benefits from a microgrid, really. And as you say, it's very familiar to a lot of us. We use the phrase microgrid, but a lot of the technologies that we would use in that environment, they're things like, solar PV, battery storage systems, electric vehicle charging, etc. So it's very, very familiar. And I think, once people get their sort of familiarization with the concept of what a microgrid does, it's great. I mean, over in the States, you've got a lot more experience of the offer. How have you found the development of the market over the last few years?
Well, it's an interesting development in the United States because where, of course, sustainability is very important. In the U.S., we have a lot of disruptions in the utility grid. So unlike a main utility grid, just in case for those of you listening that aren't super familiar with this topic, a microgrid, instead of generating electricity at a central point and then pushing it through hundreds of miles or kilometers through transmission line, a microgrid actually creates power on the site, and only through intelligent controls that actually Schneider Electric makes that you can actually automatically switch for a facility's energy usage from the main grid to the power that you're creating on site, which is great for resilience in terms of a hurricane or power outages that are lost from that. But it's also a great way to integrate renewable energy on the site if that's what your choice is as well. So in the US, it's been a major play for sustainability for people that want to add on-site renewables, but more so it's a play of energy resilience.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the biggest areas as well in the UK for growth. Certainly in the past we've pushed it in terms of carbon neutrality, or taking that journey towards carbon neutrality if there are on-site renewable generating assets available to use. But increasingly, we're being approached by pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, universities, research facilities that all need guaranteed uninterrupted power. It's that resilience. Even now, the grid in the UK, it's aging in some places. The infrastructure isn't as modern as perhaps industry requires. So this is about, as you said, taking back control and generating, monitoring and optimizing the loads of energy that you have on site. And it gives you that flexibility as well to change as your circumstances and scenarios change. You can adapt your local microgrid to your own bespoke scenarios. And certainly the resilience piece, I know that's big in the States. But the conversations you have with customers, I'm guessing you're getting a huge amount of focus on corporate social responsibility as well, like we are in the UK.
Of course. So that's a part of a lot of brands now, is that what they do ranks up to something higher. And so adding sustainability on site, reducing your energy or carbon footprint, and making sure that the workers that work there really feel like they're on the right side of history is something that a microgrid can also kind of bolster. I mean, you get so many benefits. You can also, you have energy resiliency like we just talked about. You have sustainability. You can also sometimes turn a profit because you can sell back energy at peak demand. So it's really kind of, customers are finding some interesting things now. So in the time of COVID, we just talked about this, but why do they think energy resilience is important now, do you think?
It's really interesting. I mean, obviously we're in sort of strange times at the moment with the world of COVID, but certainly from our experience over here, the initial impact was that pharmaceuticals and manufacturing sites, they just had to close down immediately because there were so many unknowns about the virus itself and how society could transmit that amongst workforces in confined spaces. So immediately some very, very big, well-established sites were just put on lockdown. And the challenge you've got then is no revenue, but huge sites with assets that are just sitting there. Profit needs to be made for these organizations. And it's about bringing back businesses online. For me, the microgrid conversation has certainly only been enhanced by these circumstances we find ourselves in, because microgrid gives you that local control, that resilience, that sort of that comfort level that you can monitor assets, control assets, and actually get the best out of them, optimize them. Your resilience on the grid is perhaps being minimized at that point in time. So you can actually minimize the amount of people you have to have operating certain bits of machinery as well. But the resilience is even more key at the moment in terms of businesses now talking about, okay, we need to work out what the new normal looks like. How do we move on from this and move forwards? And people aren't just talking about recovery now in a business sense. They're talking about driving excellence in their recovery. They're talking about how do we take this opportunity where we now understand a lot of our workforce can work from home. That's going to reduce our carbon footprint. But how do we optimize our organization for the future? And we're finding that people are now seriously looking at 10 and 15-year roadmaps around their energy and carbon journey. And microgrid is the hub of that, because it's giving them the backbone of their energy that they need. They can cover their base load, or they can cover their whole site if possible. But it's giving them what they need in terms of that confidence to grow their business in what's been a very challenging time. Organizations need to recover quickly, but also take any opportunities they can to now enhance the visibility through digitization of their assets, their energy plant. And I'm sure it's the same in the States, James. I mean, it's something that's affected all of us as a common scenario. But I mean, have you had much feedback from organizations that have been impacted under these circumstances?
I think it's a really interesting thing, because just as myself personally, I've been sitting at home, and it's really made me question what and who is really classified as essential to ensure continuity in society. So in the years past, microgrids have really been thought to be only for large infrastructure installations that have really, really high energy demands. Well, that's really not the case anymore, especially with innovations in technology and business models like energy as a service. So I'm at home thinking, what if my grocery store loses power and I'm unable to access food? Or what happens if my cell phone tower goes down and I'm unable to call for emergency services? So you shift from things like large wastewater treatment facilities or, military installations or large municipalities, and then you're thinking more granular. How can we add a battery energy storage system to a cell phone tower? And that's technically a microgrid. Of course, you can add like a natural gas generator, but we just want to keep it more sustainable, but that's still a part of the mix. So these things of where we thought, I need energy resilience, there are mechanisms to enable those people. And so we're seeing in the US, people really question, even though this isn't a large site with high energy demands, it still needs to have some sort of backup or some resilience. And why not make that more sustainable while we do it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting you talk about the different scales of how this has impacted on people and how that's relevant. As you say, microgrids can just be a communications tower in a remote location, or, it can be part of a national grid and infrastructure. I mean, in the past, we've talked about using microgrids as part of disaster recovery. And when we talked about that as a project last year in the UK, I didn't quite realize the relevance of some of the conversations we were having, because even as you say, at the start of COVID, you start thinking, well, how is this going to really impact on the utilities? Are people actually going to be able to go to work and run power stations and water processing facilities as they have done in the past? So it really has opened people's eyes as to how it affects us as individuals, how it affects our communities, how it affects our neighbours down the road. One of the plus points, I don't know if it's been the same in the States, but certainly there's been a lot more community coming together in the UK, and I think that's opened up people's eyes to how we future-proof together collaboratively as well, not just in our local communities, but even yesterday talking to a developer in London who's looking at a huge tower block that will be built over the next few years. They've now, at the fairly sort of late stage of design, decided that they want almost 6 megawatts of battery in their basement. And the driver for that was that actually they just want to be doing the right thing by their bit of London. They understand that the grid is struggling to meet demand. They want to future-proof because there's a lot of electrification of vehicles, public transportation. And so they're saying, actually, as part of their corporate social responsibility to the area they're in, they want to build up the resilience for the local grid and that emergency store of power there if something does go wrong. So certainly it's opened a lot of people's eyes, as you say, to a lot of different scenarios. Obviously, you've got more issues with grid resilience, I think, historically in the US, but certainly in the UK, we're learning from that now. And I mean, how typically have you managed that disruption in the past with microgrids? Have you got examples of sites that that have been regularly affected by blackouts from the grid and how they've responded over time?
Well, yeah, so that's an interesting question, because we've done, in the U.S., Schneider Electric's done the most microgrid projects of anyone else. And so now we're starting to see people that was interested in doing future-proofing a few years ago, now starting to see the benefits of that because they were preparing for this kind of disruption. So specifically, we did a project called Montgomery County, Maryland, and after this derecho, which is like a type of storm, it's not quite a hurricane, but it is pretty severe in terms of winds. Yep. They saw what it looked like for them not to be able to have community services. And so they really took it upon themselves to make sure that they had resilience, to make sure that they could stay online all the time. They funded the project through energy as a service, which means that there's a third-party owner of the electricity equipment. And we were able to connect them with the engineering. We were able to connect them with that kind of a partner. So it really didn't impact their capital costs so much, but now they get the benefits of having renewable energy on site, energy resilience, and being able to support its community, which was the main goal.
No, that's excellent. And I think, you've hit on something as well there, that the plans can change with a microgrid. People years ago talking about future-proofing, only really now understanding the benefits of it. That we're certainly seeing as well shifts over here that match that. People talking to us about microgrid 6 months ago, their drivers have only broadened around that as well. And it's presenting certainly a big challenge as we increase around digitization, the energy and power required to enable people to work from home. It's opening people's eyes. The fact that data centers are now a huge market on their own as part of the world of IT. The amount of inquiries and drivers we're having around this is massive, and I can only see it growing. I mean, the scale of this, as you mentioned before, is something that's very, very modular almost as a technology. You could be looking at what we call an academy, a small school over here, going all the way up to a regional geographic sort of size project. And What have you found in terms of drivers, but also challenges in the US around this? Because obviously a lot of people have very good intentions. They want to do the right thing, but a microgrid takes a bit of planning.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's also really unique in the U.S. We have this situation in one of our regions in California. And if you're not familiar, if listeners aren't familiar, so in 2017, there was a pretty stark wildfire season. And the wildfire season, of course, happens in certain geographies around the world. So there's some planning, they know it's going to happen, but they've been progressively getting worse over the past 20 years, I would say. It's interesting because the utilities in that area, since 2017, if severe weather like a wildfire threatens a portion of the electric system, the utility may deem it necessary to turn off electricity to portions of the grid in the interest of public safety. So this could mean disruptions for a multitude of public service entities. But it's a kind of a unique situation for organizations, specifically in this region, because now the question of experiencing a power disruption isn't if, but when. And it somewhat forces those entities to create action plans. And so when we're talking about, like you and I, we're microgrid evangelists, I would say. We're advocates for the proliferation of microgrids, regardless of who it really is, because we think it's a good way for securing and stuff, and we really believe in that solution. But these people now are not planning for possibilities. They're planning for an eventuality. And so they're trying to figure out what's the best mix. Is it a diesel generator? Is it renewables? How long will that take? How can I pay for it? And so really our responsibility in the US is to make sure people or organizations that are experiencing this stuff, we have the right expertise and the right knowledge to connect them with the right resources. And so that's been the major challenge so far, especially for people like site managers. Site managers typically aren't electrical engineers. They're people that know the facility. Their main goal is to keep it running, make sure that the people in it are healthy. So thinking about site managers exactly, some industries can really quantify how much is lost in a disruption. So for instance, data centers and co-location providers. We have some huge data centers in the American West that typically are on their own grid system. And so energy resiliency is key to the people that have space in co-location centers. And so those places can really quantify what 10 minutes of a disruption, 20 minutes, an hour, a day, a week, and they know exactly the monetary value of having a power disruption. But then your focus shifts to places like healthcare facilities or hospitals. And so the value of energy resilience isn't the dollars lost, but more human loss is more at the center of their focus. And so we're seeing site managers now kind of look at, okay, what is the value of energy resilience in my facility? What does it mean to be operational all the time? Is it financial? Is it, something else? And so it's been a big question. Is it the same for you in Europe, or is it a bit different?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that, because the minute you said about the wildfires in California, the opposite end of the spectrum we've had, certainly in the UK and parts of Northern Europe, has been extreme flooding events that has caused disruption to power supplies and even transportation routes, specifically public transport as well. And there does seem to be a huge shift in environmental conditions, and it does sort of open up that whole conversation about the future we face, about the next 10 or 15 years, the environmental conditions we may face and how they may impact on our grids locally and at a micro level. And I think for us, this has really opened our eyes, as you said, to so many different scenarios that a microgrid can help plan for and cover for. Certainly, as you said, with the healthcare, which is hugely prevalent at the moment. When we carry out site surveys now, we're looking at dilapidation surveys perhaps on a hospital, and we're finding that, yes, they've got a fantastic diesel generator that was installed in the 1970s when the hospital was first built, and it's been tested as per the regime, maybe for a few hours a month. But when they go to fire it up in an actual scenario, they're almost crossing their fingers. They don't know that generator is going to meet the needs of that hospital, because of the age, but also because it's an older technology that may not even be fit for purpose in terms of the hospital may have grown in size, so its base load may be bigger now. So we're talking to a lot of hospitals and healthcare providers saying having the generator is fine, and as you mentioned a moment ago, James, it's then having that mix of different energy assets as well to back that up. So something like a battery storage and a solar PV system, just to make sure that you've got that kind of that mix of the right different types of technology, that when you need to go into an island mode or subsidize your own energy in some way, you've got that opportunity to do it with confidence, and it's all digitized and on a screen, and you can control it yourselves. And I think, as you say, we're both microgrid evangelists. We see the benefits of this, but we also see the challenges people face on a day-to-day basis. And certainly, as you say, pharmaceuticals and manufacturing, they can't even afford a blip of power of even a few tenths of a second sometimes, because it may spoil a batch of food or medicines that's being processed. So as you say, they can quantify the downtime or the loss of a product. So it's not just a straightforward 2 or 3 year payback as a lot of the traditional sort of energy efficiency models may have been. This covers so much more now. And I think, talking about some of the challenges as well that customers face, it's, as you say, it's talking to the right people. So if you're talking to an estates team, they understand and they know what their assets can do. It's getting that buy-in sometimes from other colleagues and stakeholders. And how have you addressed that in terms of communicating the message of microgrid at different levels to different types of stakeholders?
Well, it's an interesting point, because when you think about typical marketing or typical business development, you're thinking of a type of persona that you're trying to talk to. I think energy resilience really resonates with people who, we call this person like a rational radical. So there's someone who's kind of leading the company, making decisions. It can look like a director of energy, it can look like a CEO, it can look like a site manager, but it's someone who thinks that their job really hinges on the focus of renewable energy, making sure that the site has like a better thing, and that also it meets the needs of the business as well. We're trying to lead these conversations with these people to make sure that it meets their goals. The microgrid can actually give them energy during a disruption, or on-site renewables. So it's just an interesting conversation. And I don't know if we change it that much. Typically, so in the US, we have this offering of energy as a service, and we bring that as part of the conversation to say, hey, money is tight, especially right now. How can we help you with this partner, with this business model called energy as a service? How can we help you upgrade your infrastructure, upgrade your buildings, energy stuff, through this kind of mechanism? So it's an interesting thing that people are still trying to learn about. But when, people in like those top seats or at site managers, when they figure out, I can have, renewable energy on-site integration, or I can have resilience during a disruption at also no upfront cost. Yeah, that sounds great to me. So it's an easy selling point, because who wouldn't want that?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting as well from the perspective of how people perceive microgrid as well. Sometimes what it means to them when you say that phrase initially, for me and you, we know that it's a very, very big sort of catch-all kind of phrase that can mean all kinds of different things. But I think one of the challenges we face when we're engaging with different stakeholders is understanding that actually a microgrid can be a fairly quick win, that actually it's just using sometimes the assets that are already there, in terms of, as we discussed earlier, a generator and some solar PV, and maybe adding some battery storage into that. But it's a fairly non-invasive energy project that can bring a huge amount of benefits, because it's effectively a control panel and a network that is just optimizing the different assets around a site. And I think sometimes, as you and I know, as sort of the representatives of an organization, if we can simplify microgrid down to what it is as its core component, that actually gives people a lot of reassurance that there's some quick wins in there, especially if it's something that's fairly product agnostic, that you can pull in different manufacturers' devices to work as part of this optimized network. And I think, I don't know what the experience has been like for you, James, but sometimes just getting all those people in a room to start with and just putting a headline up there saying that we're going to give you back control of your organization, almost from forget the kind of the energy and the carbon conversation for now, which is a hugely beneficial aspect to a microgrid. But you can engage a lot of people if you talk holistically around the organization. Have you had much experience of that yourselves? I mean, is it something where, at a board level, at an estates level, you can find common ground where you can get people in the same room to talk microgrid?
Yeah, I think it's an easy thing. As I was speaking about earlier, it's a really easy way to get people into a room to talk about renewable energy. It's an easy way to get people in the room to talk about energy resilience, especially in the regions of the U.S. that are on the coastal sides, where different states have given subsidies for people that do inclusive of renewable energy stuff, that also have pretty severe weather that causes power interruptions. And so typically they don't have an electrical engineering department that helps them with that. So I think a lot of people are hungry for this kind of a message, and they don't know what they don't know. And our role in this has been like the trusted advisor. We educate them on, what their goals are and how they integrate. So Andy, though, what do you think, especially for in Europe with your team, what steps can companies take to maybe begin the conversation with you all?
Yeah, that's a great question, James. It's right back to the fundamentals for us. We get inquiries from people who may have read about a microgrid on a blog, or they've heard about it at a conference or a networking event, a virtual one these days. And so we go right back to basics with them and ask them about their metering strategy, because a lot of people over the last few years, they've had the conversations around big data and big information. So for us, it's making that tangible and starting to set out a roadmap for clients and saying, well, actually, if we understand where your energy is going on site, that's great. If not, we can help you with that as well. We can help you understand where the energy is being used or where the opportunities are for efficiency. At that stage, once you've got that kind of that visibility, that crystal ball almost of where the energy is going on site, because as you said, there's a lot of different stakeholders involved. Some people don't understand the metrics of energy, and for a lot of people it's invisible. It's something that flows in wires and pipes, and they don't see it as a tangible thing. So for us, it's breaking it right down to basics and understanding the uniqueness of the site and what those challenges are that are presented to that business over the next 12 months, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it might be for them. So it's then understanding the steps that we can guide them through and almost, as you say, become a client-side advisor. Almost you ditch your Schneider polo shirt at that point, and you almost put on their polo shirt and just say, right, we're on your side. We're going to help you as a business understand how to get to a microgrid now. And it's that confidence you build with the customer, taking them through those steps. I don't know if it's been any different for you from your side of things.
Well, it's really interesting because I think from like our business developers here in the US are really trying to get people to ask like 3 major questions. Are you wanting to integrate on-site renewables? Are you wanting to lower your energy bill? Are you concerned with your ability to withstand a power disruption? And if they don't know the answers to those questions, or they're like, oh, I should really have that kind of a plan, and then we come in with the business model like energy as a service, those things make those like answering those questions much easier. And so just more directly, I think yours and my emails are both going to be in the description of the podcast. So I think anyone that's interested or has questions or just wants to talk can email us both about microgrids. Of course, like I was talking about earlier, we're microgrid evangelists, so it doesn't even need to be a sales conversation. Just if you're interested in microgrids, let us know. Also, you should definitely, for anyone that's listening, you should definitely follow me on LinkedIn. I post all things microgrid or clean tech, or if you're more comfortable, you can interact with me on there. That's fine too. And also connect with us on our website. We've just, our website's really comprehensive in terms of educating you on what a microgrid is. And there's a contact us form on there. You can reach out and I'll definitely get that note.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, James. I mean, also it's worth pointing out to people, we've actually got some demonstrations we can show people as well. We can show live microgrid sites that are actually happening out there in the real world. So if anyone's got 20 to 30 minutes one day, have a cup of coffee, watch a demo on microgrid and understand. We regularly run webinars and we put them in our LinkedIn streams, both James and I and the rest of our RESS team. So there's always visibility, there's always the opportunity to engage with us. But please, if you've got any queries, engage with James and myself. We'll more than happily field your energy, carbon resilience related questions. And if it's not a microgrid solution, we've got colleagues that can help you with any of your energy and carbon matters as well. So we're here as a sort of open line for any kind of queries around energy and carbon.
Thank you for listening to Active Energy. We're thankful that you decided to spend some time with us. If you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, wherever you listen, it would be a great help to us. Please also follow us on Twitter. It's @SchneiderESS, or on LinkedIn and Facebook by searching Schneider ESS. We have also started a LinkedIn group specifically for listeners of the podcast. It's a great place to interact with peers and continue the conversation from the podcast online. Be sure to look for the Active Energy Podcast LinkedIn group and join today. We'll be back in just a little bit with another episode. Until next time.